Howdy. My name is Nonat, and you may notice I am a lot
Nice.
sweatier than usual, and that's because I just came in from my walk. Now, normally I would shower and make sure I look all nice before recording a video, but I did it this way because I think it is relevant to the subject matter. And as you can tell by the title of the video, it's about Pathfinder's combat balancing. Now, Pathfinder as a whole is an incredibly tight-knit ship when it comes to mechanics and how they are integrated into both combat and roleplay. But combat in Pathfinder is a little bit complex from an encounter building standpoint. Now, the basics of the game tell you, hey, for every party member, you can allot this much experience worth of difficulty, and every monster is worth a certain amount of experience based on their level versus character level. And I believe a moderate encounter is about 80 or like 120 experience. I don't have the tables memorized, but it's a nice little way to balance encounters of, hey, here's my XP budget. I want the encounter to be a little harder than average, so I should add either a bunch of little monsters or maybe one big monster and a middle monster to reach this difficulty threshold. This is not a perfect algorithm. Different monsters will have different advantages over different character classes and whatnot, but it is very effective. However, there is something to these encounter buildings that I think does not get said enough, and this can lead to over-tuning days of adventuring in Pathfinder. What do I mean by that? Well, I'm talking about the fact that Pathfinder 2E assumes the party of player characters is going into every combat with full resources. If a level 5 party is going into a moderate level 5 encounter, it is assuming the spellcasters have all of their spell slots. Everybody has full focus points, and most importantly, everybody is at full hit points. That is why that moderate encounter is deemed moderate, because by using their resources, this fight should not be a challenge. This is something that I think a lot of GMs, myself included for a long time, did not take into account. So you might have your party fight a moderate encounter followed by a severe encounter, but they might have spent a lot of their spell slots, a lot of their resources, or God forbid, lost a lot of hit points in that moderate encounter. Maybe there was an unlucky critical hit, and you as the GM send them right into a severe encounter for like a mini boss fight, not even an extreme encounter, which is the highest tier of encounter difficulty that Paizo recommends throwing at your players. But all of a sudden, because they're not at full resources, that severe encounter might actually be more difficult than a standalone extreme encounter. And this is not a fault of the players, but it's also not necessarily a fault of the system. The encounters are just designed to assume everybody has everything. If you have a witch or a psychic and they don't get a chance to refocus before that boss fight, they don't have any focus points, well, good luck. They've just lost half of their class's main abilities that make them efficient fighters. God forbid, if the wizard is out of spell slots, he's just going to be throwing telekinetic projectiles because he's out of options. And if anybody is below max hit points, especially if they're a squishier character, they could go down to a single unlucky crit from an enemy. Granted, a lot of people will go down to a single unlucky crit depending on the enemy's difficulty. What I'm trying to get at is when you are designing your Pathfinder 2E encounters, keep your party's assumed state in mind. Or, if you're like me and you will often assemble encounters on the fly mid-session, keep an eye on what your party's looking like. Are they feeling pretty good? Did they get away without spending many spell slots or focus points? Okay, send them a nice difficult encounter. Did that random goblin make them all spend their focus points and their once per day battle medicine and half of the sorcerer's spell slots? Okay, maybe reel back that mini boss encounter. Obviously don't make it piss baby easy just for the sake of keeping them alive, but make sure it's going to be fun. If you planned for your party to be at full resources for a fight, and they're not, that fight will become intrinsically more difficult than you originally established it to be. I think this is a really common source of the accidental TPK. This is something that has come up a lot from a lot of Pathfinder 2E horror stories, is people saying, hey, we went into this fight, which was right after this fight, which was right after the first fight, and we had no way to keep up. We're level 1, this monster in the 4th encounter of the same adventuring day is like level 3. We could barely hit it, we had no spell slots to inflict conditions, all we had were the marshals attacking and the casters throwing out cantrips, and we got destroyed. And Part of that, I believe, is also on players not budgeting their resources well, which if you're a new player, how are you expected to? That just makes sense. Like, you're not going to know how to budget resources if you are a new player. But also the 10-minute refocus. I think a lot of people need to spend more time thinking about refocusing and especially treating wounds. You know, you need to make sure at least your hit points are as close to full as possible in an encounter. Now, obviously, as a GM, you can leverage this against your players in a really cool way to tell a really great story of saying, hey, you're on a time crunch. You have 30 minutes to complete this dungeon, and there's 3 encounters. You know, you can't spend 10 minutes before every encounter recharging, because then you are going to run out of time. If each encounter is 2 minutes, it takes 2 minutes to get from encounter to encounter, and you're spending 10 minutes each, you're not going to have enough time. But if you're going to do that as a GM, you need to tone down the difficulty if you want an attainable combat that is still going to be challenging. And here is a nice little cheat, I guess if you want to call it, as a GM, if you want to throw a threatening encounter at your party while not breaking the facade of it being difficult but giving them a better chance. It's very complicated, you know. Only true Pathfinder veterans who have spent hours studying the blade know how to do this. Reduce their armor class by 1. That's it. like I know that sounds like a simple fix. If you want to make an encounter just so much more attainable, so much more doable, reduce their armor class by 1. Trust me, don't change the damage they deal, don't change their spell slots or saving throws, just reduce their armor class by 1. It's going to make a world of difference. Now, unless the creature's entire gimmick is its massive armor class and it encourages saving throw attacks, well then obviously you have to be a little bit more aware of what kind of monster you're changing. But if they're going to fight a Goblin King, just reduce his armor class by 1. You know? You will be shocked how much smoother of an experience it will be if it is just getting hit a little bit more often. Take this advice however you want to. I just think this is something that needed to be said, that enough people, or that a lot of people just don't talk about. You need full resources if you are going to be fighting encounters the way the rules tell you to balance them. A moderate encounter for a fully prepared party is not the same difficulty as a moderate encounter for a party that is out of resources. Pathfinder 2e is a great game in that you are never out of resources. You know, you can always refocus. Every class has something they can do that's useful. You know, cantrips scale incredibly. Every martial class can always rely on their basic physical attack to get stuff done, but it is going to pale in comparison to something like a focus spell or a spell slot. That's just all I'm trying to say, is GMs, keep your party's condition in mind when establishing encounters, and players, keep your own condition in mind before you delve deeper into the dungeon. You obviously won't always have the freedom to take 10 minutes to treat your wounds and refocus, but if you can, do it.